It's 6:30 and we're already back in open session. So we're gonna start. Presentations, there are no presentations other than the two presentations that are in the agenda. You're over here, I'm looking for you over there.
I moved.
You're moved. There are no taking positive steps awards tonight? Okay, so we'll move on to public input. The purpose of the citizen input agenda item is for the public to provide comments on any agenda item or to publicly address the Board of Education on items that pertain to school business. The amount of time allotted to each speaker is generally will generally not exceed 5 minutes per person to allow all people who wish to speak an opportunity to be heard. However, the president may modify the time limits at his or her discretion. If the speaker has a question for the board, they'll be duly noted and responses will be provided in an appropriate manner. But the board cannot respond to individual questions or individual comments as part of the public input agenda item. As an additional reminder, the board cannot take action on any item that is brought forth during the public session, input session, or on any item that was not posted in the meeting agenda. Citizen input is an important part of the board meeting agenda, and the board appreciates hearing from the community on issues concerning them or the school district. So Jack Tatzel?
Tatzel. Yeah. Where would you like?
You can come up sit here, right? You can see from the table, right? Perfect. Have a seat.
Thank you. Jack Tatzel. We're all aware of the McIver Institute report that came out in May. Claimed that the fairly extensive equity program that Vincent's school put in place last year was done in secret of the school board. I talked to Vince, I emailed Adam, talked to some other school board members, and I truly believe it was not done in secret of the board. I also believe it was done in secret of parents and the public. Now, I'd like to talk about that more, but time is limited, and there's something more important that I need to share tonight. Some stories. A Lodi Elementary School student asked her mother, were there any good white men in history? What's being taught in that classroom? She's wondering if there's any good white men in history. The next examples come from another family. One of the kids came home from school and said, you know, we're learning about groupthink, psychological phenomena which causes groups to reach consensus decisions without critical evaluation. The only two examples the teacher used was the Nazis with their Holocaust and Trump supporters. Now, like the guy or not, half the families in the district supported Trump. And the comparison, or putting in the same bucket with the Nazis who murdered 11 million women and children and men, in the same bucket with Trump supporters, it alienated half of the kids in that class and half of the families in the district. So much for making people feel welcome at school. Something right from this parent. What makes it okay for a high school teacher who most likely doesn't understand the relationship between bond prices and interest rates to bash capitalism in the classroom? This occurred last year. They asked students to read stories about how bad capitalism is and give presentations, which they had to include the race of the person who wrote the story. When the teacher discussed the positives of capitalism from the source material, she kept saying, that's not true, that's not true, that's not true. What makes it okay for a middle school teacher to tell a group of kids they have privilege simply due to the color of their skin? To me, that's racist. Sorry, folks, I think that's racist. This is what critical race theory says. This is what it expounds. And I think that's racist. It's divisive. This occurred in the 8th grade. Teacher said the kids were privileged because they're white. She also stated that white people have it easier than people of color. I'd like to ask a farmer or small business person that puts in 12 to 15-hour days, or the mother with kids, has to do breakfast, get the kids off to school, to daycare, do virtual learning, has a full-time job, soccer, supper, church council. If she ever looks at the color of her skin and says, hey, you know, my life's easy. Sorry, it's not, that's BS. How is it okay during the run-up to the 26, or, let's see, and it didn't just start. This has been around for a while. In the run-up to the 2016 election, a school puts up a banner showing the timeline of the formation of different parties and not mention that the Republican Party founding principle was the elimination of slavery. The banner was in the elementary school. It listed the reason for the founding of the party was the elimination of tariffs, no mention of slavery. Well, I happen to have visited the little white schoolhouse in Ripon, Wisconsin, and toured it. And in 1854, in that little white schoolhouse, the Republican Party was founded to oppose slavery. That coalition opposed slavery. They elected Abraham Lincoln as president, and after the Civil War, that coalition of Republicans fought for the rights of African Americans. Now, whoever made that banner chose fit not to put that on there. Because again, we don't want second graders to think there were any good white men in history. You get kind of emotional sometimes looking at this stuff. These were experiences, well, and I'm also wondering, it was a banner. It was up on display. No other teacher felt comfortable saying anything. Where was the principal? I mean, this one is basic, folks. Not done, just went by. These were experiences from one family, and there were more of them. The father was going to present these, and they had a family meeting yesterday. And the family decided it was just too dangerous to risk the retaliation from teachers, staff, and the school district for the parent to present these items. Other families have come to us also. There's a group of us getting together. They come to us also, and they have stories, and they're afraid to come forward because they think whether it's teachers or staff will retaliate. How many teachers would like to speak up without the fear of retaliation? Are there some? I would imagine there are some. So that last school board meeting, I watched it, and God love you folks for going through all this stuff for all that time. It was a long one, I know. But at the end, it occurred to me actually this afternoon, you guys kind of almost gushed over each other about your accomplishments, what you did, what great people we are. People are afraid to come to you and talk, tell you what's going on. We think there's things going on behind our back, and there are. Very concerned. There's people that are afraid to speak up. There's some of us that are willing to speak up, and we will represent them. We think we have a significant problem. This is not all people being welcome here. This is a lot of people don't feel they can even say, hey, I don't think that's right. Thank you.
Wait, before you go, so we're not allowed to have a discussion about it, but any incidents like this that you brought forward should go to Vince to be looked into.
I think I just explained.
Right.
They feel teachers, teacher union, staff, Vince, school board, will take it out on the children, will take it on their siblings. They're afraid to come and speak
And
out.
in some cases, they have been reported up the appropriate channels.
Okay, good, right.
There is no teachers union.
Yeah, there's no teachers union.
Well, there's the National Teachers Union.
There's a teachers union.
Put a bunch of money out there for fighting parents that want to debate critical race. They put it out there. The National Teachers Union said, we got lawyers and we got money. You teach that stuff in your classroom, we'll defend you. Doesn't matter where you're at, what the state legislatures say, you teach it, and we'll defend you. We're worried. We're very worried with what's going on. We don't think it's right. We believe critical race theory is just a theory, and we do believe that it speaks too much to oppression of people. It divides groups. We've made a tremendous amount of, since the Civil War, up through history, we've made tremendous goals and gains. And this critical race theory is going to stagnate the progress we've been making. We want to eliminate racism. We want to eliminate racism in our schools, in our country. But by telling people that you've got white privilege, life is easy with you. One of the books that Adam mentioned in his report in May. So you want to talk about race. I didn't bring it with me. Page 22 or 23, it says, whites oppress blacks because it makes it easy for them to get rich. There was another one just as horrendous as that, in page 20. And I thought, wow, this is really amazing. I got to see how she explains this. When I was in college, I used to read Kurt Vonnegut, a science fiction guy. And you had to follow these strings and stuff, and I thought, this is amazing. This is as good as Vonnegut's book. Well, she never did explain it. Because we don't oppress people of color to get rich, to make it easy to get rich, to make our life easy. We don't oppress people like that. As a matter of fact, when you bring everyone along, it makes life better for everyone. So instead of oppressing them, you want to bring them along. You don't want to divide them and tell them you can't because this person. It's just wrong, and I don't know what they propose we do after they break down all of our systems. Maybe they just let the folks that took over the 6 city blocks in Seattle run the country. I'm very proud of our heritage, and we have ugly scars as a country, as human beings. We do. But the United States and our Constitution is the best opportunity for people of color, for people of Asian descent, for white people to be successful. And to tear that down is just wrong. Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you. Heather,
Thank you.
Heather Schilling.
Hi, my name is Heather Schilling, and I have 2 kids in the district, and I stand before you to remind you that these are our kids. They do not belong to the district, the school board, or the ever-powerful teachers union. But let me back up just a little bit and tell you why I feel the need for this reminder. I attended both open forum meetings and networked with many people before, during, and after. And one theme that was brought up over and over was transparency. There is a significant mistrust between the board, administration, and parents. Last year, an open records request indicated that parents were overwhelmingly in favor of opening the schools, while the union put pressure on the board to keep them shut. And maybe it wasn't the union, maybe I'm speaking out of context there, but there was pressure to keep the schools shut. Yet not one board member voted based on the will of the community, 7-0 to keep the schools closed. Another example of the same level of mistrust between the board, administration, and parents is the equity agenda that passed last fall. This passed without parental knowledge or involvement and without a vote from the school board. If you search the word equity on the district website, you will not find it. The district administrator in Lodi advised that equity is not the same as critical race theory, but parents are seeing otherwise in the classroom, as Jack kind of talked about, and gave several examples. And I don't know how many other examples there are out there, and if there are people that are afraid to submit their examples or don't know what to do with them, or even have kids that are too young to understand the things that they're hearing and just take it on face value, and that scares me. And for those that may be watching and they're not aware of what critical race theory is, it is a method by which labels and expectations are placed on people based on their race and their gender, not necessarily on their merit or their worth. It seeks to solve systemic racism by redistributing wealth and privilege to people of color. So, just to take this a step further, just to show that we're not just, making these things up, we wanted information, we did our research. Because of all of these examples that we heard, we filed an open record request to see how or if the ideologies of CRT are being utilized in the district. As the emails are public record, the person that made the request asked for any emails within a 12-month period that contained one of the words, supremacy, racism, or privilege. The expectation was that there would be about 50 results. There were over 16,000 emails. Yes, 16,000 for a community the size of Lodi. He adjusted the records to only see those in leadership positions and select directors of curriculum. There were still 2,500 emails. The district said to review those emails, there would be a significant dollar value that must be paid by the parent. He asked to waive the cost due to public interest. The request was denied. The first request was over 2,000, closer to 3,000 if I remember correctly, and then the second request I think was like $400, which was still quite a bit. And I just stand before you asking to release those records at no charge in the name of transparency and public interest. I would love more than anything to find out that critical race theory is not being taught in the classrooms. That is my sincere hope, and remain cautiously optimistic, but until we see those emails, we don't know. And we're just asking for transparency. I've been told by members of the school board that your goal is to be transparent. It was talked about in both of the open forum meetings that that's what you want. Well, that's how you get it. You show us exactly what our kids are being taught. We need to know, we deserve to know. And what also troubles me is going back to that teachers union comment where, they publicly, the NEA publicly said, they met over the 4th of July weekend and released a statement to all teachers that they should continue teaching critical race theory even if there are laws banning it. They also instigated teachers by saying they have a large defense fund that is ready to fight for them. That scares me. That's too much power, and I don't think that there's enough of checks and balances. Maybe that's not what's happening in Lodi. Again, I'd like to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, but without seeing emails and learning more information, we don't know. So, and to me, I feel like that's also pushing an agenda, and, to have more information, maybe I can be proven wrong. Hopefully I can be proven wrong. And to me, it's one thing to teach kids about past and present injustices, but it is another to place labels and expectations on people based on their race and gender and force kids to see differences that may not even exist. This causes division of groups, and it does not cause inclusion or unity. If I was a person of color in a classroom and teachers were asking students to notice what makes me different, I would feel extremely alienated. I also found a statistic that made me really sad, and it showed that 35% of young people, only 35% of young people are proud to be an American compared to 70% of older adults. And I thought about that for a moment, and I wondered why that could possibly be. And the answer seems to be indoctrination. And I'm not just saying in the schools, because maybe these examples were, one-offs. Maybe they don't happen all across, but, there's also social media. There's a bunch of different influences. And we just want to make sure they're not happening in the school, that the teachers that are teaching these things are staying neutral. So both the equity agenda and the back to school decision happened without parental consent and seem to be at the insistence of the teachers union. Regardless of what you believe about white privilege, white supremacy, and systemic racism, it is many parents' position that these controversial subjects are teaching our kids to be activists and that they should stay out of the classroom, and teachers also leave their personal bias out of the classroom. As a result, again, we're asking to make these emails available to the public free of charge. This is a reasonable request that would help demonstrate the transparency you strive for. These emails may be nothing, or they may show the district has been caught with their hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. I am honestly hoping, again, that this CRT program is not being taught in the classroom and that we get confirmation of that through the emails. I also want to believe that the board would like to be more transparent. I do, I think that that is the case, but actions are stronger than words, so we shall see. In the meantime, I will remain cautiously optimistic. Thank you.
So when we tell you that we're not doing CRT, you just don't believe it?
No, it's not that, it's that when
Well,
you.
that's what you're saying.
No, I'm not. I'm saying that when we find 16,000 matches on words like privilege, racism, and supremacy in a district the size of Lodi, it makes us at least question if we are being, and CRT is defined so different from so many people, as is equity, So to know more, to get more information, I think that's a totally reasonable request. And to say, just because one person is telling me that critical race theory is not being taught, no. I'm a critical thinker. This is who I am, and a lot of parents, yes, do you believe everything is, somebody tells you, do you believe everything the news reports? I don't. I question things, and I just want to see emails. I just want to see transparency. I want to see what's being promised.
I'm glad you're questioning things, that's good.
Okay, that's it.
Judy Molnar.
Excuse the scoop. Thank you. Kind of on one side. My name is Judy Molnar. I have a son here in the Lodi School District. We've lived here for about 4 years. We moved here from Madison, or the Madison area, the outskirts. And I was so happy to find this little community that had the whole time, home time values that I was hoping for and searching for, that my son could grow up with. And that in the past year, I just kind of been disappointed with, because we moved away from the Madison area to get away from things such as equity. So, equity, and just the division of all the different classes. We also wanted to make sure that there is Christmas and Christmas concerts, that Halloween was celebrated, that there's no black and white or black and orange day. And so, it's been a little sad this last year because it's been really hard on me. I was a single parent all through COVID. My son has autism, so he has all these different special needs. And like going through all the different COVID, in and out of class, and there was no structure. For him being like, one time he was there 2 days, and then all of a sudden they're gone, and then expecting me to have like tests done right away, and me working at the same time, and then trying to do his virtual learning at home at the same time I'm working. But it was a lot for parents to handle, especially me. So that really got me a thinking, and was kind of disappointed. Still moving on, and then hear more and more about this equity training, and then about the lack of transparency that we heard, like parents not being able to hear about this, and it's like at this point I haven't even registered my son for the next year, because I want to keep my options open. I want to know what the board's going to do. I want to know what the school district's going to do. And how hard is it going to be on me in this next year with COVID, and as well as my son, because going in and out, that was really, really rough on him. And so, we just are asking for those things, and like everybody said, we always appreciate transparency and knowing what's going on, and how our kids are being taught and what they're being taught. So that's all I have for today.
Okay, thank you. I lost where I'm at. You were Judy?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Melissa Brooks.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Melissa. I'm here to speak for a couple of reasons. First, I would like to express gratitude for the school board's vote to make the masks optional for the summer school. Although this policy option wasn't the one I personally would have chosen, I believe it's a step forward in building trust back with parents. I'd like to thank everyone who voted in favor to allow parents the choice to choose what is best for their family. I would like to encourage the school board to continue to vote to remain mask optional for the 21-22 school year. I'm not sure where anybody is leaning, how that's going. I'm not even sure how we're gonna decide what happens. But, there are a few concerns that I'd like to discuss. The quarantine guidelines. It's been stated that the quarantine will not be required if the close contact was wearing a mask or if they were fully vaccinated. Now, last school board meeting, we already discussed and submitted facts and references to the facts that masks are ineffective and offer next to no protection against virus-sized particles or small aerosols. Let's review and give more context. The COVID virus particles are too small to be stopped by a surgical or cloth mask. airnow.gov states that surgical masks, dust masks, and bandanas or other face coverings do not offer protection from particle pollution in regards to forest fire pollution. Smoke particles from the wildfires measure from 2.5 to 0.01 micrometers according to the United States Environmental Protection Agency. A viron of the SARS-CoV-2 is about 0.1 micrometers, as well according to the National Center for Biotechnology Information. If these masks do not offer protection from smoke pollution, which is similar in size or even bigger, then they won't stop the COVID virus either. So to tell a family whose child doesn't wear a mask that they have to quarantine for 14 days, but a child who does wear a mask doesn't have to when they are both equally at risk is simply absurd. The child with the mask is not protected more or less than the child without the mask. The only thing the mask is providing is a false sense of security to the wearer and those around them. According to an evidence-based analysis of why masks are ineffective, unnecessary, and harmful, titled Why Wearing a Mask Makes Healthy People Sick by Dr. Jim Meehan, wearing masks for extended periods of time increases incidences of headaches and negatively affects work performance. The analysis also states that masks inhibit airflow into or out of the lungs, lowers blood oxygen levels, and raises carbon dioxide levels, which also increases the rate and depth of respiration. Doing so actually increases the likelihood that each breath will contain viral particles. With increased depth of respiration, you are also allowing those viral particles to travel deeper into the lungs, thus increasing the potential for a more severe infection. The potential for infection of other inhaled viruses is also greater due to potential contamination of the face mask and the fact that viruses, as well as bacteria, are opportunistic in warm, moist environments. The article also states that decreasing oxygen saturation levels, even a small amount, decreases partial pressure of oxygen in the arterial blood, which in turn can cause physiological detrimental effects after only about 1 hour of wearing a surgical mask. There's plenty of studies that have come out. I did not bring them with me, but the carbon dioxide levels that children are getting to within minutes of putting the mask on is actually like 9 times the limit that is they're supposed to have in a normal setting. I would also like to reiterate again that children are not at risk of dying from COVID. According to the DHS data, out of children ages 0 to 19 in Wisconsin, as of 7/9/21, 3 have died out of 1,915 COVID cases. That's still a 99.99997% chance of surviving COVID for children. I just want to remind you all that this vaccine is not FDA approved. It is an emergency use authorization only, and therefore it is considered experimental. According to the Vaccine Adverse Events Reporting System for the USA, there have been 438,440 adverse effects reported from this vaccine. 9,048 of those are deaths. Other reported ailments are miscarriage, heart attacks, myocarditis, pericarditis, thrombocytopenia, severe allergic reactions, Bell's palsy, tinnitus, and other life-threatening events. We have no idea the long-term effects of this vaccination, and to request or require or recommend that children get these vaccinations at the 12-year mark is to me child abuse. It comes off as the school district is trying to punish those who either don't want their children to wear a mask or get their child vaccinated with this experimental injection. The risks of masking and experimental injections do not even come close to the benefits. Yet we feel we are being bullied or coerced into doing these things that we feel are harmful to our children so we can go to work and provide for our families. Further, while we're talking about possibly having to keep the children home again for the third school year in a row, the logic of keeping schools closed in the first place was to protect senior citizens who are at most risk for this virus. Yet the moment the vaccine became available to the district, they provided shots to all the teachers while there were senior citizens that were in line that were 500 people long. 84-year-old ladies were standing in line while all the teachers some of them maybe senior citizens, but probably not 84-year-olds, had to wait in these long lines. The district abandoned the kids by hiding behind the senior citizens at the beginning, saying, we're gonna keep you home because senior citizens need to be safe, only to throw those senior citizens under the bus when it was time for vaccination. Pair that with a mandatory mask policy when the kids did go back to school. Kids' mental and physical health declined severely. At the forums, I learned of a case of a student who had a seizure thought to be brought on because of excessive amount of screen time. I talked to parents whose kids suffered headaches that led to glasses and eye doctors that saw a surge in nearsighted prescriptions with the onset of the increased screen time. This is unacceptable. These are our children. Like, we need to have the choice. We chose, like someone else said, to have our kids back in school last fall. So you guys went against what 75% of us wanted for whatever reason, and I don't think that that's acceptable. This is about us and our kids, all of us. I don't know if you have kids in the district or not, but what we wanted should have been taken into account. Thank you.
So there was a number of misinformation in there. So when you cough virus particles out, you're not coughing individual virus particles out. You're coughing droplets of moisture and mucus out.
That
That are
contain viral particles. I understand how viruses work.
And they're caught by a mask.
So we can breathe that in.
So we're just gonna
we can
keep breathing
contaminate
those
our
particles
bodies
in?
even
Right,
more.
but study after study in schools has shown that masks reduce the amount of transmission of COVID-19.
Then why was my daughter quarantined 3 separate times when she and the mask wearer were both wearing, or the COVID positive child were wearing masks? What was the point of the mask then?
I don't know the specific situation.
But that's all the situations.
That's everybody's situation. If you were in contact 15 minutes sitting 6 feet from someone, then you were quarantined, but you both had a mask on. So now their health is being affected by wearing this mask all day long, and you're taking them out of school in a solid learning environment where we have to send them to daycare with a daycare teacher who still has to work this whole time with our COVID kids so that we can go to work and provide for our families. The daycare teacher is still working. She still has other kids because our child is not positive and does not test positive.
And there wasn't an outbreak in any of the daycares that are watching the kids. They,
Right.
You know, in a lot of cases, weren't wearing masks if they were 3 and under.
So, anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Janelle Anderson? Huh? Oh, Janelle Anderson?
Hi, I'm Janelle Anderson. I have lived in Lodi for 22 years, something like that. And I actually used to teach in the district. I don't teach in the district anymore, but I'm very proud to be a citizen of Lodi and to know a lot of people in the community. And, you know, listening to the people speak tonight, it's hard. It's hard to hear people's fear. It's hard to hear people's anger and mistrust, especially as somebody who was a teacher for a really long time, especially as somebody who was a teacher who taught really hard things sometimes, who had to have really hard conversations in classrooms sometimes. And I think too, knowing that people have been through a lot, and you guys have been through a lot, and I'm aware of that, and I really respect your public service. But I also think that a lot of this fear and a lot of this anger and frustration is sort of being kind of misdirected in this moment. And I think that it also may appear to you guys that there are more people in the community who feel this way than actually do. I think that there is a loud, but I think a minority of people who feel this way. I think there are thousands of people in this community who believe in the work you're doing to both protect kids and teachers, but also to provide students with information, with real access to information, to think critically. And I think that maybe those people aren't being quite as loud right now in our community. And so as much as I can, I would like to call on them to speak in support of the work that members of the board are doing that they agree with, and also to speak against some of this vitriol, some of this this really cynical, politically motivated movement. And I don't think I really don't think the people in this room are politically motivated like that. So I hope that they don't necessarily think that I'm saying that to them. But I do think that the information about things like critical race theory and about equity and these kinds of things, the MacGyver Institute, these are politically motivated organizations and institutions that are coming from places like the Manhattan Institute, the Federalist Society, that are actually generating these laws, all of these talking points that then make their way onto social media, and then people who care about their kids, like the people in this room, read them and they think, oh my God, what are these teachers doing, right? And I get it. I get why they think that. I get why they think, you know, Vince is doing something wrong. I mean, that's just not what's happening. And it makes me sad, because we have a really great community, as already has been said here. We have people that really love their kids, that want what's best for their kids, but we also have kids of color in this community. I had lots of them in my classroom. We also have gay and trans kids in this town who need us. They need us to be brave and courageous and speak for them. I'll never forget the day that I had a young man in my classroom. He was an African-American boy. He was the first African-American boy I had ever had in my classroom, and I was teaching about the civil rights movement, and I thought to myself, I can't teach this the same way. I have to be more thoughtful. I have to be more sensitive and think about, like, how does he feel in this classroom surrounded, you know, by people who have really different life experiences that have brought him there. And so I read, and I was thoughtful about it, and I talked to colleagues. That's what teachers are doing. That's what equity is. Critical race theory is a system that was actually developed by legal scholars to understand why we have inequities within our system. It's not something that teachers, when I was a K-12 teacher, I didn't think about critical race theory. I don't even think I'd heard about it. But I get why people think that that is sort of this sort of crazy, scary narrative, because that's actually what's being sold to people right now. And it's being sold in a really cynical and tragic way. So I'm not going to convince any of the people probably in this room or who are watching to change the way that they are thinking, but I'm actually asking you guys to maintain the courageous stance that you have shown. And I'm also asking the people who are watching, who know that we need to protect our kids, that we need to protect, equitable and build more courageous institutions. I'm asking you to speak out too and to have private conversations over bonfires in backyards this summer, instead of having these conversations online where all of this misunderstanding is being generated and propagated. And I also really, because hearing some of this stuff just is so hurtful, because there are kids of color and trans kids in this community who watch what is said here. And they hear these adults saying things like this, and whether you mean to hurt them or not, doesn't matter. Because they feel hurt, they feel afraid, they feel like you don't want them here. So I just want them to know that there are thousands of adults in this town who see them and who love them and who are going to work harder and support those of you on the board who are working to build equitable schools. So I thank you, and I just really encourage you to keep being courageous, because it's gonna take courage through this, but we can do it. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to speak that's not on the list? Okay, we'll move on. So consent agenda. Consent agenda items in this section will be adopted as a group unless a board member requests a specific item to be removed from consent agenda and addressed separately. We have approval of the minutes from the last month's meeting. We have a number of vouchers, payroll, check deposit, direct deposits, account payable checks, ACH payments, and credit card payments. Fundraiser requests, we have one for Paint the Town Blue High School Volleyball. There are no fundraiser reports, no field trip requests, and no committee recommendations for approval. Under other, we have the spring sports summary, season summary. Under resignations and retirement, we have 2 administrative assistants. We have a high school math teacher, middle school yearbook advisor, a food service van driver, JV girls soccer coach, and assistant forensics coach. Under co-curricular, we have a very long list that we do every year of people that we're hiring to take these positions. So we have the head varsity boys soccer coach, the varsity girls swim coach, the assistant volleyball coach. We have an extended 7-day contract for the middle school dean of students. We have the homecoming advisor, the FFA advisor. We have 3 fair coordinators, forensics heads coach, forensics assistants, 2 freshman class advisors. We have 2 sophomore class advisors, junior class advisor, and a senior class advisor. We have 2 people at 50% for the Thailand exchange program, and 1 person at 50% for the German exchange coordinator. We have 50% appointment to the math team. We have mock trial assistant, color guard, extended choral services, extended instrumental services. We have the music director, music vocal director, music choreographer director, musical set design, musical pit orchestra, play director, play set designer, National Honor Society. We have yearbook, art club, visual arts classic, link crew, PBI, 2 PBIS coaches, the athletic director, pep band, and the high school newspaper, The Advocate. And then we also have a 10-day extended contract for 2 people in counseling and a 30-day extended contract for agriculture. Under community crew, we have a bunch of wage increases. There are 7 of them for the crew staff. Under regular staff, we have 4 summer school teachers. We have 5 summer school educational assistants. We have middle school educational assistant change in level. We have a high school math teacher, primary school education assistant, primary school special education assistant, high school special education assistant, primary school special education teacher, high school special education teacher contract modification. We have summer district office support, middle school special education assistant, middle school administrative assistant, and middle school social worker. Under personnel other, there is nothing.
Okay. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Do you want to table the assistant volleyball coach though?
Yeah, we have to.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're gonna have to amend that with the
Okay,
volleyball coach.
so I'm gonna amend my motion to approve the consent agenda while tabling the assistant volleyball coach.
Still second.
Okay, motion by Angie and a second by Bill. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'm abstaining.
One abstainment? Is that the right word? So it passes 5-0 with one abstain. On to the regular agenda, strategic planning.
Yeah, so
That's you.
we have a couple people here to talk about the strategic planning process. I just want to give people, again, a reminder. The board approved the strategic planning process and a timeline at your January 11th board meeting with a really aggressive timeline to have something presented back to the board by July of 2021. The board met on 2 different evenings in January and February to learn about this process, to map out the community and select individuals that represent the community to serve on the Vision Element Study team that would coordinate this entire process. The board then gave this group a charge and turned the entire process open to the VEST team who ran the strategic planning process. Tonight, we have some members of the Vision Element Study team here. I'm fortunate to have Heather Hatley and Ann Groves-Lloyd to present on the process they went through and the unanimous recommendation that came out of that team. So I'm gonna turn over to Ann and Heather.
Cool. Thanks for coming back. Tyler, if we stand down there, can you get us on camera?
Yeah.
Cool. Sure. I'm not a sitter while I present, so nice to
Good.
see you all.
Thanks for being here.
Okay, good. Thanks, Tyler. Go ahead and throw on the next slide, would you please? So Heather and I are honored to be here representing the Vision Element Study Team, or the VEST group. It's been an amazing process. We should say a little something about ourselves. I'm Ann Groves-Lloyd, lifelong resident, 5th generation, raised here in Lodi. Currently the mayor, spent 30 years working at UW-Madison. Happy to be focusing on my hometown these days.
And who are you? My name is Heather Hatley. We've been part of the community for 20 years now. I have 2 children, one who's an alum of the Lodi School District, and then our daughter who's a sophomore at the high school.
Excellent. I should mention I'm a proud alum of Lodi High School. First we want to thank the board for having the courage to charge the community with coming up with the vision and the strategic plan for the school district. I've worked in a lot of organizational settings, and I know it takes a lot of faith in the community to feel like you can turn that over. And I think we felt the weight of that. So the charge that you all gave us was to develop a community event culminating with a presentation, ta-da, that will engage all stakeholders in a process to inform the development of a vision and mission for the school district of Lodi and guide the school district's decision-making for the next 5 years. I promise we are not going to stand here and read slides to you, but that charge was really important, and I think our group really focused in on the weight of that and wanting to make sure that we did a good job with what we did. Next, Tyler, please. Thank you.
We felt like it was important to talk about where we fit in the cycle of planning and putting together the strategic plan. So we put this one together where we talk about the fact that the school board, you guys who are elected by the community, came back to the community to say, where do you see the school in the next 5 years and what do you want us to be focusing on? And you will hold the administration accountable. So thank you all very much for nominating 12 of us to be the Vision Element Study Team, but that wasn't enough. And so we put together the 2 community events where we reached out and had 148 people respond through our advertising campaigns to register for the event and be part of the conversation. We diligently recorded that information, analyzed that information, and are here to present the findings of those 2 nights. And what we hope from here is that the mission statement that we came up with and the strategic plan will be adopted by you all tonight. And at that point in time, it is your job to inform the entire school district community of acceptance of that plan and actions moving forward. So we will turn over at the end of the night all the data and the mission and the vision, or the strategic plan for you.
That other thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So, the Vision Element Study Team, there were 12 of us who served. And we tried to put together sort of a word cloud of where we all came from or who we represent. Some of us are farmers connected to the ag community, marketers, entertainers, an attorney, a dentist. Do I out Joel? A dentist, parents, but ultimately what brought us all together in that room and in the conversations for the future was a deep caring and passion for the youth in our community, for our students. Tyler, could you flip down one, please? So I think our initial charge was for 3 meetings. We didn't think that was anywhere near enough because we all love meetings, especially when they're several hours long at night. We wound up meeting 8 times for at least 2 hours each meeting, plus homework. We all did some beating of the bushes in our own way to market and encourage people to attend. We mapped the community one night. We had post-it paper all over the room and came up with areas of the community that we wanted to make sure were represented. At the events each night, we served as hosts and table captains, which was a pleasure. From the Conversation for Our Future, all that raw data was analyzed, and from that, we constructed a mission and the strategic plan from that analysis, and obviously we're here tonight to present it to the school board. Go ahead, Tyler, please. So as you all know, the community engagement events were 2 3-hour evenings. We had 148 community members register, which was pleasantly thrilling. I think we would have been really, really happy with 75 to 100. That 148 people were willing to commit 6 hours of their time, again, after a long day at work, and finding childcare and all that good stuff. We also got to enjoy 4 student performances, which were fantastic after a year and several months of no entertainment except my husband's voice and the television. It was nice to hear the students singing and see them performing. It was fabulous. And we ate 350 really good cookies. I ate at least half of those. I'm kidding. So these are just a couple pictures or a few pictures from those 2 nights. What I wanted to point out was people were really engaged. People were leaning in at tables. There was no kind of sitting back. I didn't see anyone that was looking around the room. Rarely saw people checking watches except when we were waiting for cookie time. It was just a really vibrant evening, both of those nights. Do you want to make any comments about the pictures?
So we did, because we started our planning before a lot of us had opportunities to get vaccinated, we had to be thoughtful about how we prepared our nights. And so we kept our table list to 10 people, and we were even able, the day of, to continue to welcome people in who were registering and asking if there was open space still at the event. So that was really awesome. So we had 15 table captains. We grabbed a couple extra people to help us with managing the groups. And yeah, I think as Ann said, there were some really wonderful discussions that came up on all sides of the spectrum about all different aspects of life here in Lodi, which was pretty fantastic.
It was.
Thank
Yes,
you,
please. Sorry, Tyler.
So we did, like Ann said, 2 nights. There were 4 activities across the 2 nights that we did. Each one helping us gather information about what the community's thinking about, what's on their minds, what's helping them project ahead to the future and looking to the future. So the first activity that we did was Mads, Glads, and Sads. And this gave us all an opportunity to come to the table and talk about things that were making us mad, glad, or sad. Pretty self-explanatory there. And from that night, as we wrote down comments from all participants at our table, and Mo thoughtfully, frantically tried to decipher the hieroglyphs on those Post-its, we saw some developing themes of conversation. So COVID, of course, being a big one, showed up. There were lots of strong and differing opinions about the same topic on both sides, to workforce and opportunities beyond the classroom, and Lots of different topics that came up, but so we were starting to hear from the community, get that feedback, and that's information again that we'll be turning over to you guys tonight.
So one of the activities, the evenings were planned to give everyone an opportunity at the beginning of the evening, the glads, mads, and sads, and then the next one you'll hear about brag, wonder, worry, bet, are a way for all of us to kind of shed what happened getting to school, or giving us an opportunity if there's a particular issue that was really driving our participation there, to give us a chance to share that and for it to be recorded. I have to say I really enjoyed this, so I'll out myself. I graduated in 1980, and I spent a lot of time on this 70s one, and it was just, it was a blast. People were running around. We tried to make sure the questions that were on there were ones that not just lifelong residents here could answer, but also newcomers could talk about what was happening in their neck of the woods when they were growing up during these different periods of time. There were a lot of questions. People were very curious about some of the happenings in Lodi, and I think I wrote, there was a riot on Main Street back in the 70s, and lots of people were really curious about the riot on Main Street. But it was cool to see this history out, and to see the conversations around this. And the picture over here on the right, some folks are looking at old yearbooks. I stayed far away from those, but Vince, you wheeled in every yearbook from the last, 40 years, 50 years? Yeah. So it was there was a purpose to it, but it was also really fun, and there was a lot of commonalities. Oh yeah, I remember that, or oh yeah, that band or that song, or it was great. Go ahead, Tyler.
So the third activity we did, which was the first of the second sessions, was
that one.
oh, there we go. Brag, worry, wonder, bet, and it was a way for us to think about when you are out in friend groups that aren't necessarily people who live in Lodi, or when you're with your coworkers, when you're talking about Lodi to people who don't live here. What do you brag about? What do you worry about? What do you wonder about? And what do you bet on? And so this was a really good way for us to look at all the things that not just make us great, but things that we are truly worried about, wondering about, questioning, and framing that in a way that we could, again, start to analyze the themes that the community was bringing forward and factor that into our strategic plan. So, the first one was brags. There were lots of people who said there's wonderful community support here. There are lots of opportunities beyond the classroom, wonderful city, municipality, and area things, and wonderful academic success. So we picked a couple quotes. There's a great STEAM program, school system, academics, arts, athletics, opportunities for kids and facilities are great, things that they brag about. Close-knit community, especially in hard times, became a very common theme that we saw, where we come together and help each other out and support each other. Community opportunities, there's crew, Reach Out Lodi, lots of clubs, and we have a small town feel, everything you need. So those were some of the brags that came out from the community conversation.
So the worries were a chance for, and the cool thing about these conversations was we found commonality. We found a lot of commonality with one another at a table. So with the worries, evolving academic and instructional and life skills for our students came through loud and clear. Our community is changing and growing, and that has folks concerned. Strong and differing opinions, and the communication and engagement was a big theme heard over and over. Some of the quotes that we pulled out, people were concerned about the loss of the agricultural identity of our community, the transparency of the school district, worry about less failing ability to serve the needs of struggling students and learners, or struggling readers and learners. And then I think this quote in the middle, it points to some of the tension that we're experiencing as a community. Are we seeing enough diversity, more outside of Lodi, culture, race, LGBTQ? At the same time, we hear small town values are diminishing, and we're becoming more like a larger city. So there's tension in those comments, and that this work is, when you bring everybody together, it's messy and there's tension. But there's also much more that brings us together and that we have in common than there are the things that keep us different from one another. Go ahead, Tyler.
So we asked what people wonder about. I think one of my favorites was, why do we have so many gas stations? We didn't put that one on here, but I thought it was a great one.
We wonder that all the time.
Yeah, right. So that, you know, things like that sort of fell into that miscellaneous category. I don't know, with only one, how do you put that in a group? So, but communication and engagement, definitely. That innovation became a conversation point across a lot of the tables. How do we get creative? How do we solve? How do we deal with? You can fill in the blank with lots of things. And of course, the COVID impact. How is that going to impact us in the future? So things that were said. How will the past year affect education in the future? Teaching kids will be well balanced between being good people versus a college resume. Curriculum, where is it going? And what will it look like to stay adaptive to different students? What is the motivation of this program, and will it make a difference? So good wonders and questions that our community was asking us.
And bet, what do we bet on with our community? In the, again, miscellaneous comments, commitment and engagement was another big theme. Innovation was across every piece of this, and the COVID impact. But what came through loud and strong was that as a community we persevere. And I think those sheets of the decades showed too that floods, tornadoes, riots on Main Street, we persevere. We come together as a community, regardless of any economic, political, whatever difference. When the chips are down, we come together as a community. That's what it means to live here. So these quotes, I think, really reflect that. I bet people will come to Lodi to learn how we do things. We do things our own way, and we like to be a leader. We will continue to persevere as a small town with strong values. Somebody said, bet on the people of the community. And the two quotes there on the bottom right, we will start hearing from the students directly, more impact, and our youth will find value in our community even if they move away. So taking those Lodi values that they learn with them. Go ahead, Tyler. Thank you.
The last and fourth activity that we did was focusing on the future. So it was like trying to take out your crystal ball and see down the road and what would you like that future to be. So we were exploring with everybody what are the values and goals and strengths that are going to help this district in the next 5 years. What are the key moments that tell us we have accomplished, arrived, are making headway on? And what is the actual day-to-day reality that's going to be in existence for our students? What does that look like? So that was all giving us the opportunity to really just like dream big dreams and think about where we can be going. And 5 years isn't a long time, but we could certainly do a lot in 5 years. So this activity certainly, go ahead, Tyler, brought together a lot more of those ideas that we focused on for the strategic plan. Again, Ann had said it, innovation across the board was something that came up in lots of discussions at all of the tables. That we might want to think about career and technical education as well as the academic rigor. How we would want to improve communication and engage between the school board, the community, the businesses, and so that came out very loud and clear. How do we focus on the whole child, not just a job down the road or college acceptance down the road, but all the things that help us raise and send out into the world really good, well-rounded, healthy people. And how do we handle inclusion and equity within the school, making sure that students feel safe and cared for and okay to be themselves, whatever that is. So those were the themes that came out of the future conversation with everybody. Tyler? So as we put all 4 exercises together and all of that data together, ringing loud and clear, communication and engagement, connecting the student academic experience with career preparedness, the need for innovating across all areas, we've hit that one, the need to comprehensively support our students' mental, emotional, physical health, as well as academic planning and career planning. looking to uphold the academic standards that we do have and the high expectations that we do have for every child to perform at their best self. Attracting and retaining a workforce, obviously we need that in order to raise our good students, and have operational excellence. We need to make sure our buildings are prepared for being innovative and preparing for job career placement or whatever that is. So, without further ado, we proudly present on behalf of the strategic, or the Vision Element Study, as well as the community, the new proposed mission statement.
So the mission states right up top that this is a partnership with the community. So in partnership with our community, nurturing every student's potential for growth and opportunities, socially, mentally, and academically, in a safe, respectful, and an inclusive environment to create innovative problem solvers. We wanted to make sure, again, I think when the group met to noodle around with the mission statement, the partnership with the community, we wanted to have come through loud and clear. And we felt the holistic nurturing of students is in this, the academic rigor, but also that, wanting kind of the individual student's potential, whatever that might happen to be, connecting students with opportunities after high school, whether that's in the trades, whether that's at a two-year institution, whether that's college, whatever that happens to be, that we tap into that potential within every individual student and give them opportunities to explore. And then, of course, having an environment that students feel safe in, that they feel included, that they feel that they have worth in that environment. And then the world is facing a whole lot of problems right now. So to grow innovative problem solvers who are going to think outside the box, just like we're talking about asking our school district to do, we have to be raising young people who are going to become adults that can do that as well, that can solve some of the really complex problems facing our world today. So the next piece of it, after the mission, are the strategic pillars.
So you'll notice down along the bottom, we just called it out. You gotta innovate. Good luck. We wish you well. But within that, we felt like there were these 5 very strong themes that came out of the community conversation. Preparing for the future. What does that mean? Well, that means you're exploring your academic and career excellence. If you were a first grader going to second grade, are you ready? That's that academic excellence. Career readiness, helping you find what interests you, what sparks you when that time comes, and helping to nurture that. And so we wrote this out of exploring academic and career excellence for diverse futures through opportunity, relevance, and readiness, because it's not the same for every kid, and we want to be able to help every child plan for the future. That was a definite major theme through the community conversation. We want to nurture the whole student. We know that this pandemic year has led to a lot of mental health issues, and we know that that's going to impact the next 5 years and taking care of our kids. So we felt like creating a sense of belonging by growing empathy and compassion, inspiring the emotional and physical well-being of every student, really talked to how Lodi has the community and the compassion and the perseverance that we do, and that we want to continue to nurture the students to be those good community members and to carry those values on. Innovation, communication, connection, yes, we have to innovate how we continue to communicate with the stakeholders, be those businesses, parents, or our lovely neighbors out at the lake who come and visit us all summer long. We have to convince the world that Lodi is a pretty amazing place, and we have to do that by communicating effectively. So committing to stakeholders to provide clear and transparent communication and opportunities for engagement. And thank you all very much for the opportunity to have the community conversation, because that is an example of you guys being willing already to set those opportunities up through the Vision Element Study team. We have to work on the district workforce, attracting and retaining exceptional team members, and engaging them in continuous improvement, continuing education, dealing with retention and the challenges of hiring the best of the best and keeping them. So that is certainly something that you all will have to tackle as you have in the past. And operational excellence, again, that has to do with our facilities, planning for the district, incorporating innovation, budget forecasting, building maintenance, and future needs for the district, ensuring operational viability. Without our wonderful spaces and without being creative and innovative for what's coming, we'll not be successful. So these are the 5 pillars of our strategic plan that we present.
And this is what it looks like all put together, but it's vertical, not horizontal, so it's a little hard to read, so we broke it up. But that's the finished product. And we are handing it over to you tonight.
Along with all the data from the community
All the raw
conversations.
data, yep.
So you may publish that as you see fit, wherever it needs to go. And should this be adopted, this right alongside it.
And finally, final thoughts. What was that, Deep Thoughts by Jack Handy? Deep Thoughts. The mission, and we felt like the mission and the plan really reflect that this is a community-driven, this was a community-driven process. It also reflects that continued engagement with residents, whether they be parents, business leaders, whatever, but that engagement is a critical component and key to the success of our school district. Our team would like to thank the school board for trusting us with this process, and we want to do a special shout out to Mo. Oh, operational goddess that she is, organization, she was amazing. So, and I just want to throw my mayor hat on for a second and just say that the energy created through this process, and the city is currently going through a strategic planning process, and we have our retreat on Saturday. There's just some really wonderful energy in our community right now. And I feel really, really hopeful for the direction that our broad community is going to be taking. And I'm really honored to have had an opportunity to be a part of this. It's been an amazing experience. The people that we served on the VEST team with, I think we formed a pretty close-knit group.
Yeah, shout out to Tyler.
Yes.
Mary and Mandy who were
Yeah, Mary and
able
Andy
to
are in
come
the back,
tonight.
and we appreciate your being here. Heather and I mentioned yesterday, she lives across the street from me, and we've spent more time together in the last 3 months than we have in the last 20 years. So it's been a great opportunity for us to get to know our friends and neighbors even better. So at this point, we'll take any questions that anybody has.
So I'll break in and say that I was a part of this as an oversee kind of informational thing. And so I've already seen all of this stuff, and the raw data is amazing stuff. And so every board member needs to go through that raw data that was collected and read all of those comments. Is it, yeah,
That's
We
where
had
you
a
hear the
link to it,
voices.
which is-
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think you obviously done a great job of summarizing it, but we each need to go through all of those and really think and reflect on. And, yeah, that's it. That's all I'm saying right now.
I would like to say thank you guys as well.
Yeah.
When we first embarked on this journey, 2 3-hour meetings or 3 3-hour meetings, depending on who you talk to, and then 2 community events, it doesn't sound like a lot. But when you get into it, it is exhausting work. It is mind-bending work. You spend a lot of time trying to figure out, what does it mean to be here, and where do we want to go, and what are other people talking about and thinking about. And so, yeah, there's a whole lot of homework that happens. And every meeting when we said, we have to meet again, we need to meet again, you all never at any point in time interfered with that conversation. The meetings were set up, and we went. Until we felt good about what we were able to present, and that we felt like we had digested all of that data. So I thank you guys for the time and the respect that you guys gave us to really think about it, talk about it amongst ourselves. And as a group, I think when we finally got to that final product, we all felt really good about what we've been able to present to you guys on behalf of the community. So we were never rushed or pushed into any of those decisions. It really took all of those man hours to organically
Yes.
come
Yeah.
and be here tonight. So
And never once did Mo say, "You wanna meet again? What are you thinking? Another doodle?"
Oh, we do appreciate all the time, and that's a lot of effort.
It's
Very
It's
much
been
appreciated.
fascinating, yeah, very rewarding, I agree, very much so.
So for communicating, can you tell what role the board played and the administration played in the community conversation and in this process?
I think you guys did a hello
And observed,
and
which is great.
helped move the slides forward and sat very quietly at a table by yourselves. The table captains were this team,
Yeah.
and a few people we had to ask to come in and fill the tables because we wanted everybody to be part of it, who wanted to be there and speak that night. I think most of the board made it at some point in time to observe, but honestly, you guys sat back and were very quietly just taking in the event, so. Any other questions for us?
No questions? No?
Great.
Thank you guys.
Thank you very much.
I'd just like to say, I just want to thank the team, the ones who are here, and everybody else for their focus, their passion, their dedication. As they talked about, they met a ton throughout the year and were really, truly dedicated to their task, and they really went above and beyond, because I know the initial discussion was 3-hour meetings, and then the event, and a meeting afterwards, and they met many more times than that. And I would ask that the board accept their recommendation, because it allows us as an administrative team to start planning around those priorities that have been given to us by the community.
That's exactly what I was just gonna say too, so, yeah.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendation of the Vision Element Study Team, which was inspired by the community, and adopt the mission statement and strategic plan for the school district of Lodi as presented.
Second.
Motion by Barb and second by Bill. Any further discussion?
I just had a question about, like, once we get all, we've had a chance to kind of look at this, but then we'll have all that data, like, are we going to be meeting to talk about that, or is that all gonna go to,
Our
but then
job-
you'll come and talk,
Yes,
okay, because like,
so the next step out of this is the administrative team taking these priorities and developing a plan, right? And so we can't cascade those 5 plans like tomorrow. That's the one thing that we've talked to the Vision Element Study Team about, like, have a little patience, right? You're really excited, you got all this stuff and you bring it to us. We need some time to come back with a plan, right? And how are we gonna start addressing that? And us coming back to the board and meeting with the board, like, these are some things and thoughts we have about how to address these different areas. These are the plans for doing that, and making sure that that's very clear, and then that we're held accountable, right? So then we come back and you're holding us accountable as a district, that this is what you said you were gonna do, this is how you're gonna improve in these areas, this is how you're gonna measure it, and then us reporting back and letting you know that.
so, are we gonna have are we gonna be, so after you guys have come up with some plans, are we going to have that at a regular board meeting, or are we gonna have a special board meeting where we, cause like, this is kind of a weird format for conversation, cause it can go on a long time.
Yeah, typically we've done a retreat in August of some sort, to set the goals for the following year. So I would see us
Which is
trying to put
which is a
together-
regular posted meeting, it's an
Yep.
official meeting.
Yep.
It's just that, instead of having the consent agenda and all that, we
Yeah.
have a little bit more
Yep.
chance to say, this idea about the website.
Right, so, because the administrative team hasn't seen this yet either, right? This is
Fresh.
review, this is the first time they've seen it.
Right, right.
So
So
we're gonna take some time to
takes
wrap
time
our
to-
heads around it.
So,
I would just say it's exciting though, I mean, to see like, okay, academic and career planning, that's a want of the community, so how do we as an administrative team make that happen?
Right.
yeah.
It's nice
that's
to
ex-
have,
that's
it's nice to
exciting,
have that
yeah.
clear direction.
I would say this exact same thing for the board. It's nice to have that direction from the community on what to do and how to do it.
Yeah, and to have some clear, clear areas to, like you say, you can't do everything all at the same time, but there's some clear areas that can be addressed pretty quickly. And, sorry, I was just gonna ask if is that they're providing to us, is that gonna be immediately available on the website, all the
Yeah, so we have, like, the website that
Back one.
Lorraine has put together,
Mhm.
right, that the board has access to, that has all that information on it, will become, we didn't, until this was approved.
Right.
Or if it be approved, it's just a motion right now.
Oh, yeah, sorry, sorry. Yeah.
That will become active tomorrow if this is approved, and it has
As soon as they
all,
vote, I'll have it up.
as soon as you approve it, Mo will put it up.
Moments,
Lois
yeah.
got it.
All that data is linked in
Clickable
there.
button. Right. So it's
Every
all the
piece of
raw
information, yep, all the
comments.
raw data, it gives you a whole outline of the process, what's a vision element study team, and then just as, they did such a great job of going over, it'll
Yeah,
talk
I know, I
about
just was
MAD,
asking if
SADs,
it's
and GLADs,
gonna be available
and it'll have a link, and it'll have all the information that was recorded for MAD, SADs, and GLADs. So everybody in the community will have opportunity to read that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, we have it because it was just included on the agenda item, but I just
Yep.
was asking when it would be publicly available, which
As
is
soon as the board approves
momentarily.
it.
And then my follow-up question was just how, after you guys have that retreat, how will that be communicated back to us? And if it's through board meetings, will it be specific agenda items so that we know when we can know to attend those meetings?
So let me answer that. So talking with you, Heather, on various emails and stuff, and other people from the community about all kinds of different topics, clearly there's some low-hanging fruit on communication that we, not you, we can do, right? And make changes right away. And so I'm eager to make those changes right away. And so communicating stuff like this would be one of those things, so.
Because that's one of the goals, right?
Yeah,
One of the
exactly.
third- If you want to, the third pillar over
Yep,
is communication and engagement,
yes,
right? So coming up with a process that improves communication and engagement with the community will be one of the things we gotta work on and put together and measure. And so how we're gonna do that, to figure that out.
yep. So yeah, I would say low-hanging fruit as quick as possible, of course. And then harder things are gonna take some time, right? So, but there it is, right there, so. Not right there, the previous slide.
Previous.
You scroll up to that previous slide? Okay, yeah. That right there. Yeah, so, any other discussion?
I think we need to vote.
Yeah, let's do a roll call, so.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
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 okay, there you go, 6-0.
Thanks again for the board for walking through this process, and thanks to the Vision Element Study Team for all their hard work, and thanks to the community who came out and participated.
Yeah.
It was very difficult, obviously with COVID going on. When we first started planning this, it was in January, right? So,
What are we gonna do, run
not
it?
knowing that we could even have a group together, we would have to meet outside and what that brought, so, really appreciate all the hard work you guys put in to put together a process where we can get people together and we met the gymnasium, so, thank you, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're gonna let you get on with your meeting, so.
Keep me.
We're gonna the voting.
Actually, before you all leave, the Applied Population Study
Oh, they can all
Lab
go if they like.
presentation, no, they can go, but
I'm fine with them.
there is a presentation on the demographics of our area.
Report later.
I will. Thanks, you guys, take
Yep,
care.
thank you. This kind of ties in, so Applied Population Lab Study kind of ties into this whole thing.
Brent, I'll turn this over to Brent to introduce.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sarah Kemp is with us again. It's your
Third time,
Yep. So Sarah is with Applied Populations Laboratory, APL commonly known as,
Yes.
and out of, that is a group from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. The outcome, this is a scientific study, scientific methodology, not just Brent's guess on where the population enrollment projections of Lodi are going. So what's very important for us is to have a non-biased third party studying our population, because what you'll do with more outcomes is act on one of those to give us a direction. When you see the Baird model, and when we present that to you, we need a pathway with our enrollment, because at the end of 3 years, one child it does bring in about $10,000 to the school district of Lodi. So you can imagine that just, even 5 children being, a sway one way or another could be $100,000, with a 10 student swing. So it's important that we have this information to plan for the future. All of our things like facilities, education, etc. So, no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Thank you very much. Yes, so I have been with the Applied Population Laboratory since the mid-1990s, and as mentioned, I have done the projections for Lodi a couple times. The last time was about 5 years ago. And we under-projected, so you definitely are a growing district, and you'll see that in the report here. So if we look at what I'll be doing is I'll share the background information that's required to inform the projections. I'll explain the methodology that I use, and then we'll go through the actual projections. So if you look first at what is necessary to determine the projections, a very key component is the number of births that are occurring in the municipalities, as well as your kindergarten growth. And then I will give you some additional information in the report. There's some stuff about housing and population, general population, that doesn't really affect the projections, but it does inform how you are growing. So if we look at historically the last 10 years, you see that you have been decreasing 6.6%. So just because you've been decreasing, though, doesn't mean you're necessarily going to continue that trend, and we'll see here in a moment. So you have seen a decline, but if we look at it by grade grouping or by each of the schools, this is showing the total number of this past school year, and then the change in that 10-year window. So the top line is showing the high school, where you saw a 16% decrease, where that's been the largest decline. But if you look at the next green box is your primary, which has actually grown 10%. The elementary and middle school have declined as well. So if we look at then the next slide, as I mentioned, kindergarten enrollment is important. I provide a 5-year and a 10-year trend. Both of these trends are increasing. Your the 10-year is not increasing as quickly, so that means, again, it indicates growth. Your 5-year trend is even steeper. So you have seen, especially the last couple of years, an increase in kindergarten. And if we look at the births, however, those numbers in long term, that red line, you've seen a decline, and so that's probably why you have been declining in the last 10 years, you've seen this decrease primarily because of births. But if you look at more of like a 7-year trend, a more recent trend, it's steady. It's jumping up and down a little bit, declining just slightly. And then if we look at the age structure, I mentioned just some general population information is in this report. This is just showing the most recent census data. It's American Community Survey, and you can see that where that dotted line is showing the grade groupings or age groupings are down at below that line. The largest group is that age 10 to 14 currently in the 2019 data. And then if we look at housing that has occurred, you have primarily had single-family homes. The last 5 years, you've averaged about 41 homes being built. So again, if you're seeing kindergarten growth, you're seeing housing growth, you're seeing more an effect of in-migration versus people having children who are already here. So that's definitely showing up in the data here, that's what's happening in the district. And you have just very little bit of 2-family homes as well. So if we look at the methodology that we use, I'm going to share the method and the different models that are provided to you in this report. If we look at the method, it's a very standard method that has been used for all over the country and for many, many years. It's called I call it grade progression ratio or the cohort component method, and it's progressing students from grade to grade. And so this is the table that shows from grade to grade how those ratios have changed from one year to the next. If you want to scroll up just a little bit so that, so we can see that there's a baseline, which is 10-year trend, a 5-year, and a 3-year. And if you've been on the board for a while, you probably may remember that there was a 2-year trend. Because of COVID, I decided to modify that model and provide a 3-year trend instead. And so I take these ratios and I calculate out those averages. And so just to give you an example, to determine next year's second graders, I would take that ratio and multiply the first graders by that ratio to determine future second graders. And I do that with all of the grades. So if we look at the next slide, we see these grade progression ratios in a graphic form. And another thing to point out, you're seeing a trend, the birth to kindergarten baseline, 5-year, 3-year. So again, that ratio is increasing. And so that, again, indicates that you're a growing district. And also another indication of it is that the ratios that are above 1 mean, again, in migration from one grade to the next. And many of your grade groupings, this is the case, except for 9-10, which is not unusual for districts. And then if we look at the four-year-old kindergarten, because it's not mandatory, I keep that grade separate from all the others, and I determine the birth to 4K ratios. On average, you've been seeing anywhere between 42 and 45% of children that are born, births that have occurred in the district come to 4K. And I use those that baseline 5-year, 3-year in the different models that I'll explain in a minute. For each ratio is used for those different models to determine future 4-year-old kindergartners. So if we look at the 4 models that are provided to you, the baseline model uses those 10-year grade progression ratios. And to determine the kindergartners, I'm using that baseline birth data, which again, if you recall, was declining. The 5-year and the 3-year trend uses those 5-year, 3-year ratios to determine grades, 1 through 12. But to determine kindergartners, I use the recent birth trend, which was pretty steady, to determine kindergartners. And then the kindergarten trend is a little different from the other 3 models in that it doesn't use birth data to determine kindergartners, but it uses that kindergarten trend. And I utilized the long-term trend, which was, again, both of them were increasing because I used the long-term, which is a little bit more moderating than the recent trend was a little high, I thought. So in terms of the projections, this is what you should expect to see. I want to share with you in terms of what was done to address the pandemic, and having such a unique year, we wanted to make sure we got you the most reliable projections that we could. I worked with Brent to determine this current school year with your this is third Friday count, all of these years. And of course, you were down quite a bit, like all districts around the country. So those numbers were really not going to reflect an accurate number for next year. So we looked at adding students as if they had been there. So we know which students are coming back, and so we incorporated them into these projections so that we get as accurate a projection as we can for next year. And again, I mentioned that 3-year instead of 2-year model. So let's look at the projections. We look at the total district, all except for the baseline model. The baseline's showing a slight decline. I would say disregard that model. It's not the reality of what's happening, but it's nice to have this comparison. All the other 3 models are increasing. And if we look at the primary school, we can see, again, a slight increase in the next couple of years. That kindergarten trend is increasing because your kindergartners are increasing, whereas the others are more steady because your births are steady. So we look at the elementary school, pretty much similar enrollment the next couple of years, but then an increase will be occurring likely in the elementary grades. If we look at the middle school, again, a steady increase in the next 5 years as those students that you see that are in elementary are progressing to middle school. You're going to see an increase in middle school. And then if we look at the high school, even though you've been seeing decline recently, you're actually going to see again an increase happening in the high school in the next 5 years. So to summarize all of the data here, if we look at the district as a total and totality, it's going to increase of roughly 7% in the next 5 years. So even though I give you the 10-year projections, I like to look just specifically at the 5-year window initially because we know those children are born and you have them in the system, and so a 7% growth. You're going to see the least amount of increase. You could decline or slightly increase in the grades 4K to 2nd grade. 3rd through 5th, an increase of about 12, almost 13%. The middle school will grow roughly 5% in this 5-year window, and then high school about a 11, 12% increase. And with that, I can take questions.
So if you go back one slide. So your 7% is like a culmination of all of those individuals.
Yes, yes. I think, if I remember right, I believe for the district, for that 7%, I will confirm it, but I think I may have left out the baseline. But I will check on that to make sure that is true. Because that was one that, I think I may have left out to get the average, but I will confirm that and make sure that's the case.
And then Ann is still here, so if you want to see all of this data that she did, it's in here, right? This is just a summary thing.
Yeah.
And there's housing. Right?
Yeah, I'd really like to see that.
And so that's why I'm looking at you, and you can't represent all the housing in the district, but the city of Lodi, right? You're saying our birth rate is flattened or down, and we're getting an influx of people. They have to live somewhere, and that's always an issue of how long can we sustain an incoming population of people, right? We only have so many lots and so many houses being built and stuff like that. So.
And that housing information is historical.
Right.
I didn't do any projecting of new housing or anything.
No, and you wouldn't know all that detail
Right,
anyway,
right.
but I'm just, how many new houses can we build over the next 10 years?
And there's a serious shortage of multifamily housing
Right.
and affordable housing in the community that we're
Right.
trying to work on.
And none of these models, again, it's just housing information for the background, for
Right.
background information. But you could even, if you have some sense of new housing that might occur, you might figure out a ratio that might address anticipating how many students you might get from new housing. That is a possible model as well, if down the road, if you're interested in that.
But it's pretty much the city of Lodi and the town of Lodi. Those are our two biggest places. There's other places, but they're much smaller.
Can you take us back through the K-12 4 outcomes, and so I can point emphasis to them?
For the district,
Yep.
the district total?
Yep.
So if,
Is that
would you like
first
to go to the graph that
Yep, the
shows?
graph,
Okay, so if we go back, one more. Yep, that one.
Okay.
Yep.
Can you scroll so that we can see the legend on the bottom? Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't quite fit.
I don't know if you want to take it down to like 90% or something.
I can,
Or just a tiny bit of.
So
or I can just say what colors are what, because I know what they
What-
are, if you don't want to bring it down, or you want to bring it down a little bit. So this is the baseline, which of course, is declining because your births were declining. This would be the 5-year, and then the 3-year, and the 3-year is the green, and then the red is the kindergarten trend. So that kindergarten trend and the 3-year trend are pretty similar. So again, and I you, looking at 5 years out, 5 year out, you know, this is where you'd be, so, so they're all pretty similar, so that's why I think I may have taken that baseline out, because that seems like about right that we're looking at that increase, of about 7%.
So for somebody in my position, this is like phenomenally good news. It ties directly to the revenues that come back to the school district. I need to plug in one of these scenarios into the Baird model, and it's I think important that I don't make a guess, but that the board guides the business manager on the direction you believe.
And I can share with you what I've heard from other districts in terms of what a lot of districts will do, maybe go with this 5-year model so that you're not over projecting and being overly optimistic, and that might moderate things a little bit better for you. And so that 5-year, I'm not gonna, it's up to you, but it kind of makes sense that, but they're all fairly similar too, so it wouldn't really be too detrimental, like, a lot of times if I've got a big spread on these, then, then you definitely take that middle one. But because those 3 are so similar, it's not as much of an issue for you to pick a certain one, or you could average, some average a couple of them too, so.
Because Brent, you're using it, like when you plug it into the Baird model, you're basically looking at finance, like how our finances are going to be over the next several years.
Correct.
We're not necessarily talking about, oh, we need to build a new school, that's not.
No, this,
Right, like.
this would not indicate that.
I mean,
drastic
like,
pressure,
if there was a huge increase, we might be saying, oh, we're gonna need a new school, but that's not the case. But, so we're really primarily looking at this in projecting finances, projecting.
Because our
short-term income.
referendum will be ending at the end of this year, so that's why in this particular timeframe, it's important that the board has guidance on this. Thank you.
And that's why that 5-year might be wise, because that would give you a little buffer to go with that.
It'd be the most conservative,
Yes.
which is typically the approach we've taken, right? Financially, we try to be as conservative, and if we get surprised by, well, there's more revenue there, great.
Right.
The hard part is when you're optimistic and then all of a sudden that revenue's not there, then you have a really, really lot of tough decisions to make.
Yes.
So trying to be conservative with that, I think that makes a lot of sense from the district's perspective. And again, it gives us opportunity to plan moving forward
And also to be clear, the vertical line is today.
Correct.
And so
Yeah,
if you go project 1 year out, all of the numbers are very similar. That's not a hard thing to do.
Right.
It's when you want a 5-year number that it becomes more difficult.
Yeah.
5 years down the trail there.
well, and one of the things that was in board docs was the one that was done 5 years ago.
Yes, thank
Right?
you.
They were not going up.
No, they were
Right,
not.
5 years ago, so a much different kind of conversation from the business office and superintendent, like, okay, what are our next steps? So that's a good thing, that those 3 are moving in the right positive direction, but again, not in a direction where, oh my gosh, you're like this, and you're now talking about having
Not
built
having
schools or
enough
things like
space,
that, no, it's
right.
just, it's a slow growth, is what a district needs, is slow, steady growth, is where you wanna be.
I have a clarifying question. You had mentioned, Brent, that 5 kids is children are roughly $10,000. And then I heard $100,000 number.
So, trying to make this simple, after 3 years, it's a rolling 3-year average.
Okay.
So, once we realize the 3rd year of that child being in the school, in the count, multiplied times the dollar amount's 10,000. So 5 kids times 10,000 is 50. So the 5-year swing, less, more, is actually a 10 student swing. That's where I got the 100,000 swing, 50,000 less, 50,000 more, if that makes sense. And we'll deal with that more when we get more data in front of you. One thing I do want to point out is the vertical line and the black dot that's on the vertical line, that's our current count, and it would have been lower than the black dot left of it, but our registrar called every single student that wasn't here because of COVID, parents, and said, are you coming back next year, or are you, she tracked every kid, like a 30-kid window. And so we are realizing those children back into our district, so.
Yeah, yes, I had done those projections first.
Yeah.
We had this discussion, so they're very different numbers, so it was huge to do that. It was really important to do that. Tricky business right now. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. Good luck with your plan. What a great group of that committee. That's amazing that they did all that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Take care.
So,
Brent needs us to pick a number.
so we need a motion?
Yeah.
What do we do?
Do you like that blue line? Do you like the green line, the red line, or the gray line? Or something else? Or something else?
They're also
Right, but it's kind of the 5-year out piece that's more.
Right.
I think that more conservative one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, is anybody gonna argue for less conservative?
I don't think any of us are
I
gonna
think
be
we're kind of all in
wildly
agreement on that
overly
one.
optimistic.
Yeah.
You have I appreciate the conversation. I think there's an agenda item where you will formalize your recommendation. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah.
Not a motion there, though.
See it.
So they have
We
to
don't see a
be-
sample motion, so we're,
So,
Would you like a motion to be made?
that would be appreciated.
Okay, so
I
that,
apologize, I didn't give a proposed motion.
that's fine. So, the blue line is the 5-year average, correct? So I'll make a motion that we adopt the 5-year average from the APL presentation that we just heard for K-12, for K through 12, so, excuse me, for K through 12.
I'll second.
So, a motion by me and a second by Christie. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 6-0. Do you need anything else, Brent, or is that it?
That's all I need, thank you very much.
Sure.
anything else we can help?
Sale of CISA 5 property.
Yeah, CISA 5 is owned a building in Vesper, Wisconsin, and they are looking to sell it. Their board has approved selling this. But if they're gonna sell any piece of property, they need 3/4 of the districts in the CISA to approve it. So I am recommending that we go ahead and approve the sale at CISA 5 property in Vesper, Wisconsin.
I'll make a motion to approve the sale of the CISA 5 property in Vesper, Wisconsin.
I will second.
Motion by Barb, second by Angie. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 6-0. 2021-2022 academic standards discussion.
All right, so as required as part of Act 55, each year the Board of Education adopts and communicates the standards by which instruction is provided to students across the district. This agenda item was brought to the Curriculum Committee of the Board at the June 16th meeting. The Curriculum Committee voted unanimously to bring the item to the full Board of Education recommendation of approval. The committee also discussed the assessment of these standards, so there's attachment document that's shared on the district webpage each year to provide guardians and notice specific federal, state, and local interim academic testing, and it's also in board docs. So there's a recommended motion for Lodi to adopt the next generation science standards, the career and college readiness standards, and the Wisconsin academic standards as the foundation for instruction for next school year. So this is something we do on a yearly basis.
Make a motion that the school district of Lodi adopt the next generation science standards, the career college readiness standards, and the Wisconsin academic standards as the foundation for instruction during the 2021-2022 school year per requirements of Act 55.
A second.
Motion by Angie and a second by Barb. Further discussion? So hopefully some people are still watching on camera, or we'll re-watch this in the future, but much of that public input leads right back to this particular one, right? So here we're adopting the curriculum for the next year. This is it. This is what people will teach in the classrooms.
Broadly.
So,
This is what the curriculum is based on.
right.
Right? It's linked back to these standards.
This is the guidance we give our educators. We always try to come back to our standards. We've adopted as a-
I've watched teachers go through these standards and apply them in classrooms. Yeah. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? 6-0. Daycare contracts.
So we have annually renew our daycare contracts with TLC and Kitty Corner. TLC's up at the primary school and Kitty Corner is down here at the elementary school. So there are renewal contracts here for your approval.
Make a motion to accept and approve the contracts for the 2021-2022 daycare program contracts for TLC Learning Center and Kitty Corner Daycare as presented.
Second.
Motion by Barb, second by Bill. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 6-0. Before we go to the next agenda item, it's very nice having you at this table and not at that table. So can we
Yeah.
figure out how to keep that
Wait.
going?
Well, that's,
What-
but with
why are
COVID,
you
we were.
here?
spread
Right,
out.
right. Okay, so it got moved for COVID. Okay.
Yeah, that's why.
Okay.
We were
Yeah,
spread
'cause
out.
Because Chuck used to
Because
sit.
we didn't have.
No,
any-
yeah,
We
no,
need
this
to, we need to space you out, right? So to
Right.
space everybody out,
Perfect, okay.
yeah, so that's why once we, last week got, removed the masks, it was like, okay, let's bring me back over to here.
Perfect.
I just went to the other side, as I said earlier, because I'm deaf on this side, so
Right.
I'd be able to hear any of you if I was over there.
Okay. Sorry, did you want to say something?
No, we just need one more spot for our student representative.
Yeah, we'll have to add a student rep.
We must have
And
one more
Terry
table
also.
before.
Yeah, we'll add a smaller table or a piece,
We'll make it
one
work.
end or the other.
Okay, thank you. So approval of independent hearing officer.
Again, this is a yearly thing we do. Some years we use them, some years we don't. Last past year we didn't use them. But we need to approve a hearing officer. And Mr. Stryker has served in this position for the past 5 years and agreed to serve again for the district in this capacity.
Make a motion to approve Mr. William Stryker to serve as the school district of Lodi independent hearing officer for the 2021-2022 contract year.
I'll second.
Motion by Barb and a second by Angie. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 6-0. 2021-2022 staff handbook.
Yeah, so I took the staff handbook to the contract review committee. I had not made it all the way through. And one of the questions that I'd asked that committee was whether they wanted me to bring it back to that committee or just bring it to the full board. Our committee wasn't meeting again until August, so this wouldn't have been approved till September, so they said just bring it to the full board. I've made the updates, which are all laid out in here. There was some conversation at the contract review committee about PTO and you know, looking at what other districts do in regard to PTO. So CISA is going to do a survey on PTO for us sometime in August. They have a bunch of other surveys going out right now, which Brent finds very helpful, and I find very helpful.
If you
So
want
he just
that
didn't want
data,
to,
you have to
he just
fill
didn't want
out
to add
that
another
data.
one in there right now.
Exactly.
So he's just gotta, we have a series of, you know, healthcare, you know, costs and all those different things. So if we want, we will continue to explore that, and we can always go back and amend the handbook if we want, but this gives at least the business office and the district office, you know, in our staff, like, here's the handbook for
Somewhere
next
to
year.
start for the year.
Moving forward, so I would recommend approval unless people, and again, I'm open to any questions people may have as we go through it.
I make a motion to approve the 2021-2022 staff handbook as presented.
Second.
Motion by Angie and a second by Julie. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 6-0. First policy readings.
Yeah, so we have a couple different policy readings. We have, and these have all gone through the policy committee, we have the Cooperative Academic Partnership Program Policy, which is called the CAP program. And the CAP program went through the curriculum committee, who approved us moving forward using the CAP program, and then it was very nice to push it over to policy to, okay, come up with a policy now, how we're gonna run this. So thanks to Dr. Carls, who put in a lot of time reaching out to other districts, looking at what we did, and got feedback from our policy committee on a couple different occasions. We'll put together this policy, and the curriculum committee approved it 3-0 to move forward. And really, it allows our students the opportunity to earn college credit, a bunch of college credit.
Yeah, we could potentially have some students graduating from high school next year receiving not only the 5 credits for Spanish 5, but also potentially up to 16 total retro credits for Spanish and leaving Lodi High School with those 16 college credits in their pocket. And the retro credits does not, they don't come with a tuition fee. So you pay for the 5 credits, but you have the potential of, if you earn at least a B in the course, 16 college credits. It's amazing.
Yeah, so this policy aligns pretty closely to our STEM Academy policy as well, for how much the families have to kick in and how much the district will kick in, and then what happens if someone doesn't pass that class and how those are laid out. So that policy's there, so if there's any questions, Carlos is here, but there's no action, it's only a first policy read. Any more questions on the CAP?
There's other CAP programs, right? And this is
There
just
is,
the one that we're.
so CAP is run through UW Oshkosh, it's a partnership with UW Oshkosh, but those credits will typically transfer anywhere with it in the UW system. And there is a kind of online system where you can plug in the course and see, but they offer a plethora of other options as well. The trick is you have to have an educator within your system who meets the certification requirements, which is typically a master's degree within that content area. It just so happens in Spanish 5, the instructor next year that's teaching that course has that. So,
So if we didn't have that.
we're in a unique position.
Yeah.
But it does, and what we did is we had the CAP director from UW Oshkosh come and talk to District Curriculum Council this past year, so that each of those K-12 content leaders had a better grasp and understanding of the program. So if it just so happened that we did have anybody else that has that background, that we could look into that in the future. But this one kind of all of a sudden.
It fits in well and, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of the way that the course has historically ran fits exactly with what CAP is expecting for the course. There's not any big curricular changes or anything like that. It's just something that low hanging fruit that will be a really benefit.
Yeah,
for,
we'll kind of try to communicate that to families as they select courses for their kids.
Yeah, again, you never know how long.
Right.
You hope that instructor will be there for a long time, but there is potential that all the way down to middle school, right? And then when you're thinking about, okay, when do I take Spanish 1? Can I, if you access that in middle school, and then that progression of courses on up. So it's definitely those academic and career planning conversations come into play.
And the policy committee also did ask if it does extend to something more than Spanish, that we bring it back to the policy committee, because then we want to look at the cost for our district as well.
Sure.
The other 2 policies are related to the WASB quick check policy services, us finding that we had some gaps. We needed assistive technology policy and a foster care children policy. So we looked and reached out to the WASB for some sample policies, and actually Ms. Loken, before she left, put these together, the assistive technology policy and the ensuring educational stability of our children out-of-home foster care policies. Again, both went to the policy committee and both are recommended to the board 3-0. So that's the first read on those. Any questions?
Did you get any more information back from the WASB?
I haven't reached out to the WASB.
I thought they would. Everything's
Reach out to me. No.
Very good.
Second policy reading.
Second policy. My computer's thinking.
So we have policy 423, public school open enrollment, and policy 832, weapons on school property.
Yeah, so again, both of these were approved by the policy committee 3-0. We had first read last month. Both were just gaps that things needed to be added. So the weapons policy was, us making sure that we're contacting law enforcement if that happens. That was a requirement with Act 43, and there's another piece in there that I added. And then the other one was open enrollment. We needed to, for part-time open enrollment, we needed to put when courses started in that policy as part of statute as well. So just minor changes to both of those. So I recommend approval for both of them.
I make a motion to approve the updates to policy 423, public school open enrollment, and policy policy 832, weapons on school property as presented.
Second.
Motion by Angie and a second by Julie. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 6-0. Gifts and donations.
I would recommend approval of all these.
Of course.
If you have any questions about any of them, I can try to answer them for you. The one was the tiles up at the primary school, which were donated.
Look really cool.
Pretty neat. Gotta look at your plans there and go on. And then obviously the $2,500 in memory of Jacob Trotter by his grandparents at the Lodi Middle School. And then AV equipment, David Larson and his company donated over $6,000, almost $7,000 of digital equipment to the Lodi High School.
I'll make a motion to accept with great gratitude the donation of 9 panels for a kindergarten classroom from Alumni, valued at approximately $300. Donation of $2,500 in memory of Jacob David Trotter from David and Greta Minke to the Lodi Middle School, and the donation of AV equipment from David Larson, valued at $6,714.95 to the Lodi High School.
A second.
Motion by second and, motion by Angie and a second by Barb. Mix up my words. I think it's Alumnify because they
Oh, I'm
printed on
sorry.
aluminum,
Oh.
but it looks like alumni with all those eyes in
Sorry,
there.
getting really
Yeah,
tired.
because they're printed on aluminum. They're really spectacular when you see
I
them
was
in
thinking
person.
alumni. They're in one particular classroom, they're in one of the
You-
kindergarten.
Would you say this is a donation to try to get more purchases or?
Yeah, maybe.
Because they are
Because they look so
spectacular.
awesome.
We
We're
did
gonna
have a
like all of them.
conversation with our building and grounds department about whether we should do this or not.
Right.
And my guess is also just they wanted a spot where they could bring people to look at it,
Of
different
course.
districts.
Sure.
And their children go to this classroom, so.
Well, and I would be concerned about putting them in too many classrooms because I do think they could be visually overstimulating for some of our kids. That is a concern I have with them.
Yeah, so we'll take a look and see how they work.
Thinking about this room with the white ceiling and the off-white walls and it's not very visually stimulating, but that's not why we're here.
No, but for kiddos that have some sensory
No, definitely,
issues,
yes.
could be really
I know all about that.
difficult
Walls
for
are
them.
Great,
That would be
great.
me. So. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 6-0. Administrative reports, so this is their month off.
Yes.
We do have one from the primary school that talks about summer school though, from Amy, so that was nice. Nice to see pictures of summer school. Vince, student administrator.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about a few things. First of all, congratulations to our boys track team who won the state title in Division II a couple weeks ago. And thank you to our fire department and police department for giving them an escort back into town. And Joe Gentleman for putting together a pep rally at 10:30 or 10 o'clock at night, which was great for those families and for those kids coming back. What a great experience for them and what a great way to wrap up the year in high school. So that's our first ever track championship. So we might have to move some boards around up at the high school.
Make some room.
Yeah, because they're not quite, the football one is, there's not room, so we'll have to rearrange some things, which is a great problem to have.
Yeah.
Secondly, I will be sharing with the board in my Friday note that I send out the new CDC guidance that came out on last Friday regarding reopening schools. So the focus, the key takeaways are really the safe return to in-person instruction is a priority. You know, they want people in person, which again, I think everybody here would advocate for. That vaccination is currently the leading public health prevention strategy to end COVID. Masks should be worn indoors by all individuals who are not vaccinated. CDC is recommending schools mandate at least 3 feet of physical distance between students, but they would also say that they would not, that if you can't do 3 feet, you should still do in person, which is again different than the guidance we were having last year. That hand washing, testing, respiratory adequate, and staying home when sick, getting tested, contact tracing, and quarantine are all still very important layers of keeping students safe. and students and staff should stay home when they have signs of illness. There's also a new guidance on the science behind, or some of the science behind some of the layers and what they've learned. I think you talked about that a little bit with masking and things of that nature, and some of the research studies that have been done by the CDC regarding masking. And then just that our vaccination rates as well, kind of as a piece of that is, if we look at our vaccination rate, you can actually look if in your school district boundaries, what your vaccination rate is. Lodi's vaccination rate is about 56.7% of our eligible population has been vaccinated, which again is better than some of the schools north of us. But when you look at Waunakee is 70%, right? And it's one of those things that is going to have an impact on kids going in and out of school this fall. The more we cannot have COVID in our community, the less we'll have it into our schools.
And is 70% or 75% considered herd?
70. But again, if right next to you, it's
But
not
no,
70.
right, no, I get that, I just, right.
Your 70 is less meaningful when right next to you it's
Yes.
less than 70.
No, I get that.
And to speak to that, there is a free COVID vaccine clinic that's gonna happen at Reach Out Lodi this Friday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. You don't have to sign up, you can just walk in. They're gonna do a Johnson & Johnson and a Pfizer. So you don't have to take both of them, right? You can do one or the other. But Pfizer's the only one that's eligible for 12 to 18, Johnson & Johnson would be 18 and older. And again, it's just that opportunity, if you want your child or your family to be vaccinated before school starts, if you get it now, you will be fully vaccinated by the time school starts. So it's a great time for us to
And it's right here with no appointment, no charge.
10 to 2.
and-
Yep. Yeah, it would be great. So I really appreciate people doing that. And then finally, just thanks again to the board for the strategic planning process and the VEST committee. They were awesome. Watched them work. And when they were just exhausted, but still pulling things apart and the great ideas that they came on and not, a lot of times you get, when you're with a group of people and somebody changes a word that you spend time putting this all together, and then somebody comes and goes, I think this word's better. And people kind of take that, are offended by that. That never happened once in this group. They're like, no, yeah, I like that word better.
Yeah, exactly.
Or, yeah, no, it's the groups. So, it was very, it was fun to watch that process. And as they said, I was at all those meetings as well, but I was there to answer questions.
That was the amazing part, right? You and I were just sitting there, and if they asked us a question, we would answer it, but they would do it, and you'd be like, oh, that was amazing what you just did. That was awesome. Yeah, it was
Much
great.
better than I would have came up with. So it was truly and I, most of the time when you do a strategic plan, you have your administrators sitting at different tables being table captains, right? And it's really easy for that to be administrative driven or board driven, and this was truly community driven, so. And again, the timeline we put together was
Short.
We did this in January and asked for this to be done by July, and we got it done.
Yeah, and people said, but you're only gonna hear about COVID. People are gonna be, and it was like, great. You wanna talk about COVID? Talk about COVID, right? But in that whole process, let's try to talk about the future too, not just that.
So that was the great way how they had it all set up, right? Because you had that opportunity, but then you really had to turn and focus towards the future at the end. It was good.
It was an amazing thing to watch.
Yeah.
So, going off of that, I have a president's report for the community, I guess. So, many people already know this, but I want to restate it. Facebook is not where people should go to find reliable facts about the school district of Lodi. Please be cautious when going and getting your news on the school district of Lodi from Facebook. To quote Facebook themselves, we do not believe that a private company like Facebook should be the arbiters of truth. This statement from Facebook is not shocking news to most of the people in our community. Most people realize that Facebook posts and comments that are simply someone's opinion, and that those opinions may be based on rumors, innuendo, and or even misguided information. But something that might be a little surprising for many of the people in our community is the number of people who actually take the posts and comments they see on Facebook as being facts. And so let me say again, Facebook is not where people should go to find reliable facts about the school district of Lodi. When you see a post on Facebook about the school district that has you pause and possibly even think, really? Really? Please remember that Facebook is filled with personal posts based on someone's opinion, and that those opinions may be based on rumor, innuendo, and/or misguided information. When you are on Facebook and you read something that seems a little bit unbelievable regarding the school district of Lodi, please take a minute to email, text, or call anyone in the school district and verify that comment or post before you respond, comment, or share that post. Thank you. Reports. CISA 5.
We have not met since the last board meeting, so I have nothing to report.
Co-curricular items.
The only thing to report was our success in boys track, and
Yeah, that's awesome.
it's awesome.
Cool. OSC.
We met June 25th and continued to talk about fundraising. We have quite a few people leaving the board, so talked about people who may want to join the board. And then our biggest thing is this is year 10 of OSC. And so we've also decided to take on the strategic planning to coincide with what the district has done.
Wow, cool.
And rewrite our mission and everything to align with those 5 pillars. So we had a pretty in-depth discussion about how we want to do that next and who we may want to bring in to lead that for us.
Cool.
That's awesome.
And then set our retreat date for August 11th.
Well, there's a really good model you could follow that we just went
Yeah,
through.
yeah, I know. I mean, we know as the building, we're gonna be tasked with it anyway, so we're gonna have everything aligned with that, but we just felt now is the perfect time for us to kind of revamp that and then really nail down and delineate the roles and responsibilities of everybody within the OSC.
Wow.
From the administrator to the board, to the advisors, to the parents, to the students.
That's a great idea. Cool.
Sorry.
As a board member, I can remember that coming to the board, and I'm kind of like, wow, this is a pretty big push here, and I don't know that, it's gonna live beyond the grant.
Sure.
But it got a life of its own beyond what anyone on the board envisioned, and that's what we need. That's what makes this work.
Choices, yeah, different choices.
So 10 years, yeah, that's a pretty big deal. And yes, I know, personally, I was very concerned about the fundraising. It was kind of like, oh my. But it's working. People are making it happen. I know you're gonna be looking for new blood, but that gives other people the chance to step up.
So say that into the camera there.
That gives other people the chance to step up.
It's a real active board, and just really committed and a really great community.
Yep, but if it's 10 years, it's time to take a real deep look at how do we continue to move forward and not stay stagnant, so.
Cool.
There's good things happening.
Board committee reports, contract review.
So, some of the things we talked about in contract review, were here this evening, but we had a lot of discussion, about, how to, attract new teachers, how to retain staff, how to attract and retain, really great people to teach our kids and to take care of the, everything that the school needs to do. And so, in conversation with, teachers talking about health insurance, which is it's hard for everybody. It's expensive. And there was some discussion about PTO days and whether we should have them be being able to be carried forward. Just kind of an opening a discussion of policies that may affect the quality of people's lives that we should look at. And then we talk a lot about how do you find out what's important to teachers, or again, I keep saying teachers, I mean staff, like what are policy tweaks or anything like that people would really value, as well as, finding ways to compensate teachers and staff better and continue to be able to attract people into the district and not have people leave as much as possible. So that was kind of just an open discussion, that we're wanting to continue that.
I switched screens, sorry. Curriculum, just me, which is why I switched screens. So we heard from the math department, which was amazing and also sad because he's moving to middle school principal. But he assures us that it's gonna be phenomenal in the future, so that's good. The academic standards that we saw tonight. We looked at the calendar really quick for a tweak. And then we talked about textbooks and updating our textbooks in the different classrooms and the costs of that. And then whether we could continue to do virtual for some of the people, parents, students who wanted to continue doing virtual and the different options around that. That was it.
How close are we to having textbooks that are online instead of in paper?
Textbooks, textbooks are already online, yeah. Textbooks are gone away in many places.
It is something that I think every time that we look at, so example, the textbooks that we're looking at are, two of our AP courses are required, we need to update due to copyrights, our textbooks they should be within a 10-year copyright date. So when we looked at those, we did look at the ebook options too. And for some of our students, or some of our teachers and our students, they still prefer the paper option, to have that option. There's also some pricing pieces that are complicated with that because sometimes it's a lot more expensive to go that route, so.
To go which route?
The digital.
The digital.
Because it's like a yearly, it's not a, you pay for it, now you've got that digital copy for life, it's a yearly
License kind of.
license.
Basically rent it.
Yeah,
So.
Shocking.
yes.
My job
They're gonna
revolves
get you one way or another. It's
revolves
like
around
college books.
publishing textbooks, and it's a dead industry, so.
Thank you.
Fading fast. Facility and finance.
We did not have an official meeting in July. However, we did have a survey of our green space and facilities
Oh,
on
that's right.
June 17th. So we spent, about 5 hours with point of beginning. And basically, a few of the highlights, looks like we may need to look at our track. We did find some cracking at the tennis court, which is not so old, which was not good. And we're gonna, basically, they're gonna come back, so they kind of like surveyed and asked us lots of questions on different history of the different existing fields and all that stuff. And they're gonna come back to us with information, and they're gonna have like a layout, so they're gonna have a layout at the green space at the primary school, for example. And then they're gonna have to scale, like, okay, you could put a softball dive in here, or is this a soccer field, or, so we're gonna do some visual matching as a group before they actually put a final proposal together.
Cool.
So that's kind of what's happening.
When's that?
I don't think there's any date yet for that. Yeah, and they were quite shocked that, they said they'd never had a school district that had people actually walk around with them like that.
5 hours.
It was all of us, it was a big
Did you go?
group.
No? It's like
No,
the historian of the
Julie
fields.
told me she had it covered, so
Yeah.
that's fine. That's fine.
It's warm that day, too.
And it was warm,
Oh,
yeah, we lost Neil for a while. Yeah.
I was, as they say, outstanding in my field. Or I was in air conditioning
Yeah.
in my field.
In the tractor.
I got sunburned, so.
So, I mean, again, it comes back to, there are a lot of decisions that have to be made, like where do you wanna invest money, what do you, I'll use the Highway 60 field, for example, do you wanna still stay with that blueprint, because, I mean, right now the lights kinda, you have lights there, so you have a blueprint that, or a print, footprint that you kind of have to follow. Well, what if those lights change, cause right now, the lights don't work, right, and for us to fix those lights, we might have to replace those poles. Well, that cost comes, well, then do we look at the whole footprint instead, and like, you could redo things and start over, or do you stay with the existing footprint? What's those costs gonna be? And that's what Point of Beginning is gonna help us look at, that's what's those possibilities.
And then policy.
Did not meet.
Okay. With that, future meeting agenda items or if anyone would like to put anything on the agenda for a future meeting, let Mo or Vince know. And then we're done.
We'll have school reopening,
Oh, definitely.
right? It'll be on the next our next board meeting. We'll be talking about
Can't believe the
how
summer's-
we do it, you know, what the plan is for COVID. Are we requiring a mask? Are any of those things that are,
It's
you know,
okay, we
what's the
discussed that
policies in the
with
school gonna look like?
Right.
The mitigation strategies and things of that nature. So we will have some recommendations coming forward.
And I would imagine the plexiglass, right, is just gonna stay. Might as well keep it for the next year, wherever it is, right?
It's probably,
Things like that. Like you've already have this sort of infrastructure set up, just keep it going. kind of thing.
Yes, we'll talk about it.
We'll talk about it next month.
That's always the.
Alright,
So,
I'll
someone?
make a motion to adjourn.
There we go.
Second.
Motion by Angie, second by Bill. Any further discussion on adjournment?
Absolutely none.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? 6-0, we are adjourned. Thank you all.